Alright, we are recording, and I am sick in case you can't tell. Yesterday was worse. But no, I'm definitely sick. It's actually funny, last week, I don't remember if it was last week, but, oh yeah, Going Medieval Q-Sified by Tinsley PR. Last week my throat was scratchy, I don't remember if it was at the time, that I recorded this. Well, last week's video. And that's how this week started, but then Wednesday I was definitely starting to feel sick, and yesterday, because I record these Friday, definitely sick. So, yeah, lovely. And that actually made things kind of interesting because, I legitimately forgot CES was this week, but also, I was sick, so that was impairing my ability to do stuff, because even with just a scratchy throat, it still was uncomfortable. It still was, I was sick, I just wasn't, like, as mentally disrupted, I guess is one way to put it. You know, the headache and all that, congestion making it hard to think and do. Yeah, but one thing funny about how that all worked, mostly was, though, I forgot CS was this week. Intel was first to announce stuff, but I got to them last because I forgot. But it's kind of funny because you're like looking at the press releases, at least from Intel, wasn't really that interesting. So, did the dog just get killed? My dog just get killed here and then... Yeah, apparently. I don't know exactly how. Shouldn't have set off the trap. But, at least it fed the wolf. But yeah, looking at the press releases for Intel, it seems all they were really announcing was, You know what? What do you... Do that. Whoa. Okay, yeah, go do whatever now. Okay, no, well, I don't know then. Maybe that dog is... Well, no, it has a name, so it must... Yeah, it was... Wait, what? Hang on. It's reserved... Okay, you're gonna be hauling it. That's fine. Maybe I need to put down more traps. Anyway. Yeah, looking at the Intel press release, it seemed like they announced some things, but a lot of it was really just AI stuff. Some CPU stuff, but not necessarily like, you know, the CPUs. I think they did include like one that would actually be a desktop CPU. No, that's right. They were filling out the stack, giving us 35 and 65 watt versions. I'm gonna this stuff back and put down more of the traps, because holy crap, it's needed. Go away. Go away. I need to be able to read that. Such a badly designed game. I'm sorry, but it is. It truly is. I think crafting is what I want. Oh my god, why is it? Should we look, is it? No, I don't want to do that. Because I haven't used launch options to set the resolution. I'm not trusting that it will, be done properly. Anyway. Yeah, a lot of they, like, announced 35 and 65 watt versions of desktop CPUs, so that would help fill out the bottom of their stack. But it really didn't seem all that interesting. Now I gotta go between AMD and NVIDIA news, which Honestly, uh, okay, I think the way I can put it is this. AMD's was the more disappointing of the two. Nvidia's is the less meaningful, in my opinion. And I can understand that people may disagree with me on that, but it because like Nvidia did actually announce the RTX 50 series. It's like, yeah, but nothing they announced is all that interesting to me. And some of it I do suspect people may finally start realizing, wait a minute, this is nonsense. Okay, what is this? What does this count as? Because I want this stuff built, and they're not doing that. No. Maybe construction? Well, we got some that are already at that, though. I have no idea. I truly do not know. Oh, wait, no, you're working. These guys are so stupid. Anyway, so AMD officially announced the 9950X3D and 9900X3D. So that's the Zen 5 series dual CCD chip, so 12 core and 16 core. Well, one of the CCDs is paired with the 3D V cache. That because of them changing how the stacking is, shouldn't have the clock speed penalty of prior generations of that. Because the CCD is on top of the additional cache. And so that brings it, because the CCD is what really puts out the heat. The cache, some, but it's not going to be that bad. It brings the heat source then closer to the heat sink, so it should be better there. Hate the restaurant, I want that on too. Sorry. But, yeah, so that's... Those are neat products, don't get me wrong. They are neat. We'll just see how well those do. They also announced the 9955 HX3D. So, I don't remember if they had a 3D V-Cache laptop CPU before. They do now. Well, they've at least announced it now, and that is 16 cores as well. So that thing's gonna... Might chew through power, might chew through your battery, but that thing's gonna be freaking powerful. A lot of Ryzen AI CPUs were announced. No surprise there. I mean, that's basically what Intel was doing as well. But it seemed like Intel, that was all they were really announcing. Based on the press release, I haven't watched their presentation. As it is, AMD's was the only one I looked at, and that I was just like jumping around. Mainly try to find stuff on the RX 9000 series, which is so weird. And unfortunately, it's one of those things we'll likely never get the answer to because it's an internal company decision. But, so AMD had a pre-briefing with the press about the RX 9000 series. That's RDNA 4. Okay, that right now we only know of the 9070, 9070 XT. Undoubtedly, there'll be more products, but those two we know. They also gave the press slide decks that include stuff talking about them, including that it should be available this quarter. Okay, and even like an image showing AIB partner, so like Sapphire, XFX, MSI, and so on versions, right? So these things definitely exist. They had them on the showroom floor, installed in computers, so you could see the performance and also see things like FSR4 running. Like, that's all there. But they didn't actually announce it in the keynote. They did tease it, though. People that say it wasn't mentioned at all is incorrect. That is incorrect. Because they did have one guy, I think it was an Xbox guy. Well, Microsoft gaming guy. No, wait, no, yes. Because he was talking about Call of Duty, that's Activision. Microsoft bought Activision, didn't they? Anyway, they did mention a little bit about RDNA 4 coming. But it was like, that's it. Why AMD chose to do that? Because clearly they had something to talk about. because they had stuff on the floor. But why they didn't announce it, I don't know. When I first noticed this, my speculation was they just decided CES is just they want to do all this AI stuff, which they're mainly focusing on the CPUs, not the discrete GPUs. I can understand that, and I can understand that, making the focus there. Sorry, just but yeah, I can understand that being the reason. It's still weird though. Yeah, that's kind of all I got there. It's still weird. But other things I've seen, well, some people have been like, oh, well, maybe it wasn't ready. Well, AMD is, well, the fact they have it on the show floor indicates, no, it was ready. And apparently when asked, AMD even said, no, we got this stuff. It's ready. And also the slide deck saying it'll be available this quarter. They wouldn't say that unless it was in fact ready. So, yeah, it's just a very weird situation. And I don't think that they were intimidated by NVIDIA, because it does seem like, with the naming even, and other rumors that had been out, it seems very likely that this is not meant to be a high, like the multi-$1,000 GPU. It's not meant to be Halo product kind of launches. So as long as that's the case, then AMD doesn't need to be concerned with the NVIDIA, because NVIDIA is focusing a lot on that top end. Okay, I got plenty. I'm gonna whip these up now. Okay. All this was, grow, harvest, and cut plants, all just because I want them to manage the crops. 3 separate things, and then cooking, because I do want that. This is such a badly made. But yeah, it is very weird. And as I said, we'll likely never find out why AMD decided to do this. It was also a little curious that we didn't have Lisa Su doing the keynote. I think she'd been doing them for years, consecutively, the CES keynotes, so don't know. Do not know. But then maybe she's just sick. A lot of people have been sick around this time, so maybe she was, and that would be enough. But, yeah, I don't know. It is the 9000 series. RDNA 4 is going to feature more machine learning stuff. I don't know if it's necessarily tensor cores. Even then, I don't want to talk about tensor cores, because I have this hatred for tensor cores, because so many people are convinced, because of NVIDIA, that that's the only way AI works, and it's not at all. So, yeah. Matrix, there's tensor math that is involved with some. So AMD, I don't know if their stuff is going to be doing that. But in any case, RDNA 4 is going to have improvements there. Which, one thing I'd seen, I just don't remember where, made it sound like they want to have like an AI assistant kind of thing built into the drivers, including like image generation, which I find interesting, because AMD a few months ago released the Amuse software, where they worked with another company, I don't remember the name, but to basically, you just install it and run it, and you have image generation working, and it works with 7000 series GPUs, also 7000 series mobile CPUs. So like my laptop can do this. It's not perfect though. The 8040 series is better, but it does work on my 7040, and in theory I might be able to get the special upscaler that takes advantage of XDNA. I think it's XDNA. Anyway, in theory, I could try to get stuff set up there, but that's okay. I just found, because there is an open source AI upscaler out there, I just found that, and it's like if I make an image with Amuse, I will just put in there to get it upscaled. Works fine. Bit more control over it probably as well. So I do wonder if it's basically they may just fold. Well, no, they won't fold Amuse in there completely, because Amuse can also run on CPUs. Whereas if they put it into the Adrenaline drivers, graphics drivers, and that means somebody with an AMD CPU, but not a AMD GPU wouldn't be able to take advantage of it. So yeah, that'll probably change. But still, whatever. There, I mean, that's something that is apparently coming. And I think Nvidia was also saying they're doing stuff with that too, like bringing an AI assistant into their drivers. FSR4 was one thing shown on the floor. I know I saw a video from a Hardware Unboxed looking at it, and it was kind of funny because people point out in the comments, okay, this is basically saying, okay, this is impressive because even through a camera recording a monitor and then through YouTube compression, you can still see the difference between FSR 3.1 and FSR 4. One thing I'm glad to see is people were also pointing out the reality that is very true with FSR, not as true with DLSS, but very true with FSR, that a lot of it also comes down to the implementation. Because people, it's like, well, good, because it looked like crap in these games, and some people point out, well, yeah, it looked like crap because that developer decided to put in an old version, then never update it. Like, and they were naming examples as well. Yeah, I think one was also, like, Cyberpunk is supposed to get DLSS 4, which I will be talking about shortly. Supposed to be getting DLSS 4. And it's like, yeah, Cyberpunk did eventually get FSR support, but it was like, it got FSR 3 support at a time when FSR 3.1 was out, and they've not, like, changed or upgraded that. I mean, CD Projekt Red has long been an NVIDIA partner, to be clear. And NVIDIA will throw money at developers. And to be clear, when I say throw money, I mean more so just like throwing resources. Because it's not just money that they do provide. They will also like embed engineers. So there might be NVIDIA employees at CD Projekt Red. But they're working for CD Projekt Red essentially, and would be making sure that DLSS and other technologies are properly implemented. NVIDIA has the money to do that. I mean, it's I don't know if it's still the case, but at one point, NVIDIA would spend more on their driver team or their R&D team, or than the whole of AMD's existence. Like, the amount of money that AMD had as a whole, its value was smaller than what NVIDIA would spend on driver development or on research and development. Okay? Just, that is important to keep in mind. Hang on just a second. Sorry, I really needed to cough. And actually, the pause button was easier to reach in OBS than just the mute. But yeah, and it's typically that stuff like that. I don't feel should be held against NVIDIA or AMD, anything like that. But it's more, where NVIDIA is able to put people into things like that. Like, yeah, I don't. That's a whatever. They can do it. Why not? AMD would do it as well if they can. But things like what I described that somebody mentioned. By the way, I don't own Cyberpunk, so I can't speak to this firsthand. This is just what I was reading. But if it is the case that they do have an out-of-date implementation and they're not bothering to update it, that and similar things that may also exist with other developers, that I will blame developers on. Where it's like, well, no, you have this technology, you should have the engineers capable of correctly implementing it and updating it. That's on you. That is on you. Especially when you consider that, it's like, remember, I think it was even FSR 2, it wasn't even just FSR 1. But when announced, there were developers coming out and talking about, yeah, we can implement this in like 2 hours. That's all it takes. It is, talking about how that's how well designed it was for implementation. That it could be done that quickly and that efficiently. And the fact that it was also one of those, and it'll run on anything, which isn't the case with DLSS. Yeah, so it's... But anyway, we'll see how FSR 4 is when it goes live. It is apparently, or at least supposedly, it will be limited to the 9000 series. This is rumor, because it is actually going to use some machine learning systems in there. We'll see. We'll see on that. Because it, as I said, AI stuff, machine learning stuff, a lot of that doesn't need tensor cores. There's far more methods of AI that don't require that specialized hardware than do. So we might, I would not be surprised if it were to eventually come to other pieces of AMD hardware. Oh yeah, that is also true. It's possible that it's going to be running through a DirectX system. So the FSR would be able to run on NVIDIA GPUs even. We'll see. But that is technically possible. That was one of the things that that Microsoft had announced, was something to be part of DirectX that would can you tell I'm sick? That would be able to find and abstract the commands enough such that you could send the command to DirectX and it would be like, oh, okay. The AI command to DirectX and be like, oh, okay, this is an AMD GPU, I send this API call. This is an NVIDIA GPU, I send this API call. Such. So. So yeah, we shall see what ends up happening with that. But it's also, I'm wondering if there's going to be another show from AMD to formally announce the new GPUs and also the pricing, which that may be. Yeah, actually, I do need to do that. That may be the thing that will be most interesting, seeing the pricing, especially after seeing what NVIDIA's pricing is. Oh boy. Let me try to take care of this stuff first. Don't need the dog. Don't need flax. Don't need herbs. Holy crap, I don't need them. I'll take packaged meals. I'll make sure I got plenty. I think there might be some caps I can do to finish bartering here. That'll do. But yeah, so the 5090 is $2,000. Now, one thing that I saw was actually suggesting that when NVIDIA saw that AMD did not announce, because this is very true, they will set prices the minute before they walk on stage. Okay, they will update the presentation right then for whatever prices. And all companies, this is not when I say they, I'm not talking about NVIDIA. They have done this before to my knowledge. But AMD can do it as well. I don't know if they have. Intel can as well. And any other company. It is, everyone has the ability to do this and will do this. But supposedly, when NVIDIA saw that AMD did not announce it, they decided, okay, we can charge whatever we want. And they decided the 5090 will be $2,000. Which, my opinion, that is more money than sense kind of price. Where the people buying that are people that have more money than sense. especially when you consider that some of the performance claims that NVIDIA was making, I think, are dubious. The 5080 is only $1,000, so half the price. It also, when I was looking at the specs in the press releases, is actually half the specs. Like, the amount of RAM is half, the number of CUDA cores, which is the main component of an NVIDIA GPU, that is what actually does the work, does the rendering, is about half. So, in a way, that makes sense. But it still is, that is such a gulf. I mean, that's basically the 5090 is the Titan. But it's also the Kepler series Titan, which is when they reintroduced the brand. That was $1,000. I just want to point that out, because that's how much things have changed in about a decade. Actually, a little bit more. That it used to be the Titan class product was $1,000. It is now double that. It is now doubled. And part of that is NVIDIA thinks they can get away with it. And they can for two reasons. One is, at that high end, no, they don't have competition. Let's be honest. They don't. There's some qualifiers there as well. But the other is, it's NVIDIA. NVIDIA's like Apple. They have a lot of their purchases are basically fanboys. It doesn't matter what NVIDIA will put out or what the price is. They will choose that's what they buy. So it will be interesting to see what happens with the 9000 series then. Because if AMD prices that competitively, as like actually undercutting what NVIDIA is charging while providing solid performance, that kind of thing will hurt NVIDIA. I mean, essentially, I do believe NVIDIA's prices are inflated because they know they can get away with it. So it will be interesting to see what happens if people start realizing that they don't need to get away, that NVIDIA doesn't need to get away with it. But yeah, I mean, it's not true. That $1,000 gap between them does mean that there's plenty of room for them to slot in a 5080 Ti, which, let's face it, they will. Oh, yeah, that's right. One other thing. Part of the reason why I said that NVIDIA can do this. NVIDIA isn't afraid of making massive dies. Which one was it? Where they actually had to work with TSMC to figure out how to even get the photolithography system to work with the die size they wanted. Okay? I mean, it's like 92 billion transistors. Is that what I saw as the number for what Blackwell, that's the new architecture name, can support? I could believe that the 5090 might also be $2,000 in part. Well, okay, there's a lot of markup. I was like, technically, the silicon dies can be pretty cheap, especially when they're small. That's why NVIDIA went to the Zeppelin chiplet design and have continued with that on CPU side, because making it smaller, you're more likely to get better yields. These are the Blackwell architecture, the 5090 thing, is probably massive. So it has to be expensive because they likely won't get much yield from each, because if they have an error in just the wrong spot, that die is useless now. Can't sell, can't do anything. But it is also that is the reason why AMD might never be able to compete at that high scale, because NVIDIA's like, yeah, we'll just make something that's huge. And AMD might be like, yeah, we're never going to do that. That's a waste. Yeah, come on in. Actually, all that should be fall away. Do I have enough? I should actually send some other stuff. Yeah, whatever. I'll leave it at that for now. But do I have enough? I should probably also build out here. But yeah, so just as I was saying, I can believe that alone is a reason why why you will see NVIDIA having such high performance graphics cards while AMD doesn't necessarily. And some of it can just be the whole, they're willing to go huge, and AMD might not be. And I do not believe there's anything wrong with that, by the way. Some people may disagree with me on that. That's fine. That's fine. No, come on. There we go. There. Alright, so another one of the nice apartments. Actually. There. Yep. Yeah, I'm trying to remember what I was. Okay. I'm looking at the notes. Alright, so yeah, now I want to talk about DLSS 4 and the Reflex 2, which... Reflex 2 is going to be interesting, because I will not be surprised if we basically only see things about that from NVIDIA fanboys, which I would include Digital Foundry in. Although that, maybe. I don't know. I haven't followed them for a while. Partly because I at one point did see one video that they did talking about, oh crap, what was it? FastSync, NVIDIA FastSync, where they praised it in a way that it's like, okay, you clearly do not understand the technology that you're trying to describe here if you're praising it the way you are. But that and also NVIDIA press releases, I think, will be the only places you see Reflex 2 spoken well of. Because what it describes, to me, that is very obviously a technology no one in esports should be actually using. I will get to that, though. I want to talk about DLSS 4 first, because that's the one that I said that some of these performance claims I consider dubious. That's why. Because NVIDIA's doing the whole thing with the always giving performance numbers, including DLSS 4 being on. DLSS 4 is RTX 50 series only. So when they compare the 5090 to the 4090, 4090 is running DLSS 3. So it is using an older version of DLSS that lacks multi-frame generation, is what they're calling. Okay? So DLSS 3 already does frame generation, where it hallucinates a frame, and that is the correct term. It invents a frame, it hallucinates a frame, and inserts it in because the image generation can be faster than the actual rendering, right? So it just gets slotted in there. So you think you see more frames per second than are actually being rendered, okay? With multi-frame generation, they've basically doubled that. So now instead of it being one extra frame that's put in, which is what DLSS 3 is capable of doing, so the 4090 is capable of, now it can be up to 3. So that means from one frame, instead of going to 2, you're going from one frame to 4. That's doubling the performance, in air quotes, the apparent number of frames. So NVIDIA is claiming that, hey, we're doubling the performance going from the 40 series to the 50 series. Well, technically, just DLSS 4 and DLSS 3 running at the best those technologies allow for, based on how they've described them, that's double right there. So, yeah. Now, realistically, you're never going to get perfect running from those technologies. Realistically, that's true. But it's still, that's a lot of performance that you are attributing, that you're saying, hey, look and see how much faster this is. Yeah, that's a lot of performance, so-called performance, because I reject that these frames count. I do. But that's a lot that is only, that is inflating the numbers without actually showing rendering capabilities. A lot. So, yeah. You need to be very careful with what they report for the performance. And when they say double, if it's also saying with DLSS 4 versus DLSS 3, then it's like, well, yeah, and a lot of that might just be hallucinated frames, not actual rendering. So we don't know what the true performance is, except for... Crap, there were two games. Far Cry 6 and Plague something. Those were the two. Far Cry 6 is only ray tracing, the other doesn't have a DLSS 4, so it doesn't have the multi-frame generation. Those are the only two. And you did see improvements in performance, but it was more like on the 20 to 30% range, I think. And even then, that might be overestimating it. I don't quite remember. But still, those are the only ones that are showing actual quote-unquote performance. Not this hallucinated performance. So, yeah. It's... I'm not sure what the price is for the 4090. I'm pretty sure... I don't think that's a $2,000 card. So you're paying... Well, here, let me just look it up. RTX 4090. That'll be fine. Oh, what? Okay, seriously, what is the RTX 4090 price? Okay. Starting at $1,600 from NVIDIA. I pulled up a Newegg though, and there are some that are like over $3,000. What the hell? Okay, there's some that are only $1,900. But it still is. We're looking at hundreds of dollars more. Yeah, actually, damn. That might not be as large an increase. Yeah. This might be like the RTX 20 series. As I recall, that actually, it's not quite that. It's not quite this bad. I do think the 50 series is offering a little bit more performance than that price increase. But the 20 series, basically the price to performance was flat, was the same with Pascal, as I recall, the GTX 1000 series. I had to check, and NVIDIA's been doing that actually for a couple cycles now, where they have one generation that will actually improve that price to performance, and then the next doesn't. It just like continues, and they get more. They put in new technology, and then it goes back. This, yeah, it's lousy pricing in my opinion. But the fact that so much of the performance claims that they're making are tainted, I do think that's a fair word to use here. Tainted by DLSS 4. Yeah, it's... I would well, at that price, I would still never touch the 5090. But I don't even know if I'd want to touch the 580 at $1,000. Sorry, 5080 at $1,000. Because it's like, it's certainly not today. This screams to me, wait for independent reviews. It screams that. You need to see places that are just going to be comparing the rendering performance one-to-one. No DLSS. Which is not in NVIDIA's interest to share, to reveal that because they want to show off the new technology, and that allows them to amplify their numbers to inflate their numbers without necessarily the okay. Hang on. It just went to winter, so I do want to make some changes here. Push up research. Actually, that's fine. Just pushing up the research. Yeah, I can do this. Okay. I get turned around. Okay, and yes, I do want all this stuff lit up. Okay. I lost where I was. I know I was saying about make sure you see independent reviews. I mean, yeah, this is... I would not be surprised if we end up seeing independent reviews where people will be concluding, yeah, it's not worth it. Not, or just the, yeah, price to performance, it isn't quite there. But one thing I do remember, because I did name Digital Foundry as one that I've seen them make a video that clearly they did not understand the technology that they were talking about. I do want to explain that. So fast sync. And in AMD's equivalent is enhanced sync, which, by the way, that is actually good. Enhanced sync is actually good. Fast sync is crap. They're both meant to be essentially driver-side triple buffer. And by the way, I've given this explanation previously. But yeah. How do I want to explain it? And I do want to be stopping soon. And I also got to talk about Reflex 2. Because that is... I would never touch that. Okay, even if I were deeply involved with esports, I would never touch that. But anyway, coming back to the fast sync stuff and triple buffer. So, this frame we're looking at, the GPU's rendered it and placed it into its buffer, into its frame buffer. This frame buffer is then what is scanned out to the display. And by the way, it is scanned out from top left to right, top to bottom. Well, one horizontal line at a time going from top to bottom, and it starts pixel 1 is on the left, pixel to pixel 2, that's the one right next to it, and so on and so forth. Right? Even though this is how COTs had to physically render, it is still how modern displays are shown. It is how they are driven, is how they work. We do have there are technologies that don't rely on that kind of system, and I would love it to see if that would have happened. In fact, with some of the stuff with Reflex 2, I don't believe anyone at AMD would ever hear this video, ever see. But if you wanted to compete with Reflex 2 with something that isn't changing the image, that isn't the warping, that isn't hallucinating the so-called rendered images, look into adaptive frameless rendering, especially stochastic frameless rendering as well. If you tackle that, if you manage to come up with a way to send that to a display, and you may also need to work with the group behind HDMI and the group behind DisplayPort, but you figure that out, you will solve so many you will solve so many problems. I'm not an expert on this stuff, but I'm also very serious. Frameless rendering, if you can get it on that level where it's how you are sending things to the display, and that's technically possible. That actually is part of the DisplayPort spec that would even allow this. If you were to do that, you could achieve things that a lot of people would... There would be people even in the industry that'd be like, okay, this is magic. This shouldn't be possible. I'm shocked that we're doing this. Okay, but anyway. So you have that frame buffer that's written out. VSync, in order to make sure that an entire frame is sent out, because if that frame buffer is written to before it finishes scanning out to the display, you get screen tear. A way to solve that, to achieve vertical synchronization, VSync, is to add a second buffer. So one is what is being scanned out to the display. That's called the front buffer. And then the GPU can write to the back buffer. The problem is, once the back buffer is full, it has to stop because it can't write to another buffer. And by the way, this is double buffering, where you have a front buffer and a back buffer. If the front buffer is still scanning out and the back buffer is full, the GPU pauses. It has to wait until the front buffer finishes so it can start scanning out what's in the back buffer, and then it can write into what was the front buffer, because the name front and back buffer will just flip back and forth. Triple buffering solves this, because it decouples the rendering rate from the frame rate, from the display rate. Because now it has two back buffers. So one back buffer can be full and the other can be drawn into. And it'll just keep bouncing back and forth between those until the front buffer finishes scanning out. Then the front buffer will just grab whichever back buffer finished most recently. That becomes a new front buffer. Now you've still got the two back buffers for the GPU to write to. Okay? Now you still get a frame of latency from doing this. But triple buffering allows for basic guaranteed VSync, guaranteed vertical synchronization. Yes, the one frame of latency, but it achieves this without ever limiting the GPU's performance. It is not a hindrance to the GPU. Double buffering does do that. That's why some games you turn on VSync, it caps at 60 FPS. That's why. You end up with a frame cap. With triple buffering, there is no such frame cap. Okay? So a driver's side triple buffering would be awesome. Would be amazing, because that would mean that you can just turn this on. Now, any game, you will be without screen tearing, but you can also have as fast a performance as you want. As fast a performance as your hardware is capable. When I did the series statistics, which one was that? Was it series statistics 2? Let me look. I'm going to look that one up. Miscellaneous articles. Yeah, series statistics part 2, the sync encounter. So this is from 2017. Man, I did the series. This isn't just tooting my own horn. This is legitimately, I'm very satisfied with how a lot of the series statistics stuff came out. And some of it, like that and the Aliasing Adventure, the Frustrum Follies even, I mean, they really... there's a lot of technical stuff in there that's gold, in my opinion. And not just as a, like, yes, I think it did a good job, but no, I think that the technologies themselves are very interesting. So read them and try to also look the stuff up yourself as well. I know the Aliasing Adventures I included sources on. I don't remember if I did with the sync encounter. Anyhow, in the sync encounter, I was looking at the different latencies and such from different frame synchronization methods, vertical VSync method, including enhanced sync and fast sync. Fast sync is not driver's side triple buffering. AMD's enhanced sync is. If you look at the data in that article, it shows it is clearly driver's side triple buffering because there is no limitation on what the frame time for any rendered frame is. The latency, you can see there that you'd still have the frame latency, but the frame times are free to be whatever they are. And also, at the time, I think it was a Lego Batman or one of the Lego Marvel games I was playing, and I experimented with it as well, because just the opening sequence I was rendered getting to the menu, getting to the main menu, there was enough movement that it would screen tear. If I turned on enhanced sync, it was gone. But the frame rate would still be like, 87, 88, 93. I was like, so bouncing around on a 60 hertz monitor. Okay? Fast sync is like 2.5 buffers, because it still forces the game to render at a multiple of the refresh rate. So when I was doing that test on the test system, which is connected to my television that would run at 60 hertz. Technically it's on 20 hertz, but that's... the system doesn't see, the computer doesn't see. It would run at 120 FPS. Then it would jump up to 180 FPS occasionally, and there would be a noticeable hitch when it does this. Like a ka-chunk, because it's bumping up. I think it would even hit 240. Rarely. But it would typically be 120 or 180 and bounce between those, and you could feel that bounce. And that shows in the data. Whereas enhanced sync, it was freely moving up and down, but never any screen tear. Never any. And Digital Foundry did a video once talking about fast sync and saying that, oh yeah, and this is perfect because of how it locks you to these multiples, like triple buffering. It's like, no, triple buffering exists so you never have coupling. So that you do not need to have render rate and display rate coupled like that. And they're saying that that's exactly what you want. It's like, no, this is the opposite of what you want. This is contrary to why triple buffering exists. Fast sync is garbage. But Digital Foundry, at least for that video, whoever wrote that video, and whoever then edited the video, as far as like editing the script, I don't mean like the actual video editor, but the people that approved that clearly don't understand triple buffering, or didn't. They might know better now. Or they were that much, well, NVIDIA must be doing it right. And so they just went with it. And it's like, no. Fast sync is garbage. Enhanced sync is actually pretty good. It's not really, I'll be honest, I don't use it, but that's mainly because I'm mainly playing windowed or windowed full screen. Like right now, this is a window. That's also because my laptop's display is 16:10 and I want 16:9. But yeah, it is one of those sad examples where AMD does have the better technology. It did come after, to be fair, it did come after FastSync. EnhancedSync is their response to it, but it is the better technology. No one knows it because everybody just paints it with the brush of FastSync, which is, oh well, this is crap. Anyway, now let's get to Reflex 2 with its frame warping. And holy crap, when I was reading that, it's like, no one should be using this. Okay, so NVIDIA Reflex and AMD Anti-Lag, that's the name of it, Anti-Lag. These are both things meant to reduce the latency between a frame being rendered. I just realized I need to start closing up window. Between a frame being rendered, no. There. And the mouse input. So hang on, I'm just because I am distracted by trying to close these windows. That actually should be all of them. So the idea is basically the CPU composes the frame, composes the image. So the CPU is what says that there's the torch here, there's a torch here, and all that. And then it's the GPU that takes those instructions to render. It also means that then it's the CPU that knows where the mouse is, but that then sends the order to the GPU to render, and so it says that the mouse is where it currently is. But in the time it takes to render, the mouse can move, right? And also, this isn't a first-person shooter, but if it is, then that means that the mouse moving would also be changing, like this, would also be changing then the camera view. So with anti-lag and reflex what they try to do is they try to better time things out so that the gap between the mouse, the information of the latest mouse position and the rendering position, the latency between those is as small as possible. Reflex 2, so that's a changing stuff before it starts rendering, and also potentially doing some things to reduce the amount of time it takes to render. Okay? Reflex 2, it is actually changing the rendered frame. And as I kind of said before, I believe a lot of esports people that are actually legitimately serious about this stuff would be like, yeah, we're never touching this. Because what it will do is it takes this rendered frame, right? And instead of, I'm trying to think of the words for this. So, the mouse moves, right? During the rendering of the frame. What Reflex 2 does is it monitors that. It then takes that rendered frame and before displaying it, changes it. It warps it, right? That's why they're actually calling it frame warp. It warps the image so that now, see how the perspective changes here? It would, so right now we can't see this face of this building. So I do that and it will actually warp this face over, but then we'll have to insert in something for here. Here's the problem though. It doesn't have that data. It also doesn't have data on this perspective. Now technically it was funny reading the press release on this, the NVIDIA blog post, because you're talking about disocclusion errors, which have been a thing for temporal filtering methods for years and years. It's like you're not really inventing too much here. You are innovating by applying it in this way, but it's like it's having to hallucinate details for the rendered frame, right? Because it has no information on that wall right now. So if suddenly it has to be shown, it needs to invent what's there. It needs to hallucinate what's there. It's going to do that based on information it had before, which if you wait here, it's probably outside the temporal buffer. So doing that, it might be like, oh, well, I'll just, these might be similar, so I'll just continue that. I honestly have no idea how I would handle that one. It is changing the actual rendered frame, which means that that if you have that on and you're constantly moving around, you are never getting an actual rendered frame. That's never what's being shown. You're always being shown an altered frame. And that I think would be enough for a lot of esports people that are serious about this stuff. would be like, I am never turning this on because I can never trust that what I'm looking at is true. And I need to know, I need it to be true because I need to know when I aim at somebody, I'm hitting them, that's where they are. But this, you're warping it. You're changing the contents of the image. I can't trust it now. So I get the technology, but it still is. This is dumb because the people that's like you, the only people that would use it are people that don't understand the technology, but want to be like esports people, like just the random person that's really into esports type games that will pay $2,000 for the 5090, not necessarily turn down all the settings because they want things to look good. And I paid $2,000. And it's just in the basement or in the attic, which to be fair, I am in the attic. I mean, it's, yeah. I don't do esports games, but it's just people that don't necessarily understand the technology is more so my point. That would turn this on. Because I think that the people that are truly interested in esports and understand this technology, I would doubt they would touch it because it is, as I said, these frames are not true. These images are not true. You're changing them. I need them to be true. Okay, I need that to be the case. I'm trying to think, did they ever do something like that? It would be like in Star Trek, because everything, every bit of ship combat in that, you have the display. You don't actually see it's something being projected there. So imagine if you had a way to change the image so that now Starfleet thinks you're somewhere other than you are. That would be a major problem. And that's kind of sort of what they're talking about here. The Picard maneuver would also potentially be related. I mean, that though, so that's, for those of you that don't know, I don't remember what episode of TNG it was, but the Picard maneuver is basically you do a very, very short, high warp jump, because the sensors are still apparently based enough on light that it will make it appear as though your ship is in two places at the same time. So a little bit of a causality issue, but the point is it confuses the sensors. You don't know what to do. So by making that jump, you now have surprised your enemy and can attack. And Picard did this prior to being on the Enterprise. I don't remember the name of the ship. But yeah, that's also where you get the Riker maneuver, because he knew Picard, it makes sense in the episode, but Riker knew that Picard was going to do this, and so he had to counter it. And had the Enterprise activate the tractor beam to grab Picard on the ship. Picard was being manipulated at the time. Grab it, and then basically hold the ship somewhere that even if Picard fired on the Enterprise, it would be minimal damage. And I find this funny because in Star Trek Insurrection, he does something in this account about how this might be known as the Riker maneuver. It's like, well, technically he already has one named after him. I guess the writers and everyone else just forgot about that. But yeah, it's just, I get the idea to the technology of Reflex 2. I really do. In part because of the aliasing adventure, the statistics, the aliasing adventure article that I did. Because I had to look at a lot of temporal, I don't want to call them anti-aliasing methods, I call them temporal filtering methods. But some of the stuff there is exactly what they're kind of applying here, which is reprojecting the old information on. Okay. This legitimately is kind of what the frame warping is in Reflex 2. 100%. This is, I'm reading the description that NVIDIA's given out. It's like, this is what it seems like. The final, it is as though you're doing temporal anti-aliasing, where you're taking the information from prior frames, adding it to the information of the current frame, and you're reprojecting it. So it's like, okay, there was movement in this way. I'm gonna, well, yeah, let this run. I'll save when we get to night and stop. So you're collecting this information from prior frames, reprojecting it, which just means you're taking that information, you're putting it in a new position based on things like motion vectors, and then adding that to the rendered image so that you're increasing the amount of information per pixel by using the older information. This is technically called amortized supersampling. which is also the name of one of the 2 research papers that were like the original source for temporal filtering, temporal anti-aliasing. Okay, I'm gonna set it to all for now. They're not gonna change their clothes, so they're warm because they're idiots, but they will be allowed to at least. So what frame warping seems to be is it isn't adding the information to the new frame. That's not actually what it's doing. Instead, it is okay. Instead, it has a virtual final frame that all of the temporal information, so past frames and the most recent frame, so the currently rendered frame, feed into, with the currently rendered frame most likely having the highest priority. Okay? And that it's then generating that virtual frame that's what's actually sent to the display. That's what it sounds like they're doing. And by the way, that in no way requires any kind of AI to do. And we have temporal methods. We've had them for years and years. Reprojection, all that. I mean, I'm not sure how you would necessarily handle some of the disocclusion stuff. The whole, we don't see that wall, now we do. How you'd necessarily feed that in. But there are still some things you can do, because it is also a problem that has already been solved. Where, what happens when you suddenly have disocclusion for something, and so you didn't have information on this pixel previously. Well, you didn't have information on this object to render this new pixel. So how do you get that? How do you fill that in? We do have methods that address that. They're basically doing that and just adding, using this virtual frame, is how I'm putting it, to that they're warping stuff into. It's all basically just temporal reprojection into this, which it is a clever idea, but I would never trust it. Not in this way, because it's just dangerous. That you cannot necessarily trust this image, especially with them saying that it is warping the image, of applying the AI stuff here. It's like, I'm not trusting that. If it were just a temporal system, like if AMD comes up with their own solution here that is not AI based, that is just the temporal stuff, I would actually be more willing to trust that. Just because I would know, based on that description, that based on the lack of the AI, it's not being hallucinated, it is actually being interpolated and extrapolated from known data. In other words, it's going to be less magical. I would trust it more there. I still wouldn't use it, but it is an interesting idea. And also, because I talked about the frameless rendering stuff, or adaptive frameless rendering, in theory, you could build that into such a system to have a virtual frame that is getting new pixels as soon as they are available from the frameless rendering. You could do that, and it would be amazing. I do legitimately believe that, and I almost had an opportunity to work at AMD. I mentioned this before, I think. Hang on a second. That time I didn't pause. I actually found the mute button. It took me a while, but I did find it. I needed to pause. It's actually kind of a good thing I didn't get that. I didn't take that job, because that team, within a year, probably would have been disbanded. Just the team I would have been hired for, I would have joined if I did go to AMD. It was for a specific partner company. I don't want to name it. I can't. I don't want to. And it's basically that partnership ended. That company decided to start doing their own stuff. And so AMD wasn't going to be needed anymore. So within a year, that team, I could believe, would have been disbanded. Potentially some of them going to the other company, some just being put elsewhere in AMD. But in any case, if I did have the opportunity to work at AMD, well, if I were to work at AMD, I should say, because I did have an opportunity, I turned it down. I would have been pushing that, look, we need to investigate this, because if we can make this work, and I do think it can be done. They've shown off adaptive frameless rendering at SIGGRAPH. That was years ago, when I was doing my aliasing adventure research. And that was a few years ago now. That was like 2019, I think. I saw a video from SIGGRAPH where they had done the paper and they were showing it off at SIGGRAPH, okay? It is an amazing, amazing piece of technology that you could potentially apply. And Reflex 2 wouldn't even... You might be able to get rid of some of that, because I don't want to get too much into it, because I know we're running long here. Basically, with frameless rendering, you may be able to basically just have the GPU and CPU, the computer, continuously streaming out the pixels. So you no longer have a concept of a frame. And with the adaptive rendering, you could then have it prioritized in certain positions. Make sure we get the pixels here. In other positions, well, we can use older ones when we project. You could have such flexibility then for timing and pacing of this stuff. And with the stochastic element there, you would be able to get rid of synchronization, vertical synchronization issues. That's if you can. And DisplayPort does actually have a feature that would allow this. I don't know if it's at the level that would be necessary, but it does exist. You could potentially have that going. Work with that so now VSync is needed. You throw in stochastic sampling in this. And you also remove the need for anti-aliasing. And this is just a how things are rendered now kind of thing. It would take changing the drivers. It would take... I don't know how much it would take changing some of the rendering pipeline. Certainly... crap, I can't remember the name of them now. Primitive shaders is AMD's original name for the technology. What did NVIDIA brand it as when they finally got around to it? I can't think of it now. And I should. It's one of the DirectX 12 DirectX mesh shaders. That's it, mesh shaders. Because yes, that is technology AMD actually. Primitive shaders predates, at least for public knowledge. NVIDIA's mesh shaders, same idea, just done by NVIDIA. And so it caught on. That is how that works sometimes. Certainly with that, you should be able to do it, I think. Not sure about the traditional pipeline. And you would potentially need to change engines, how rendering engines work. But in theory, you could do that and solve so many problems at the same time. It would be one hell of an overhaul, but it would be amazing. And you could potentially do it in a way that Reflex and Reflex 2 and anti-lag wouldn't be necessary anymore. Because you could, by having that continuous stream, you could always be updating the frame. You would be doing some of that reprojection stuff, some of the NVIDIA's warping. Not as warping, though, more just a straight reprojection. But you could do things there. And I think you could also adapt it in a way that may even allow you to improve effective performance with ray tracing. It's like it really is a complete overhaul, complete change of how frames are rendered and displayed that would allow for a lot of things. But I don't think anyone has, because it is one of those things. You're literally talking about changing a fundamental component to how multiple industries work. Because it wouldn't just be the hardware industry. It would also be the gaming industry. It could also be the display industry. Everything would be touched by this. But if done right, it would be a similar kind of titanic shift as going from the traditional pipeline to mesh shaders. Which, by the way, we haven't really done yet. It's like, some things use them, but we're still not completely over to that system yet. At least that is my understanding. It's an amazing piece of technology. So is variable rate shading and, what was the other one? There was another that's also part of that, and I can't think of it. But, these technologies are actually really, really impressive. That could do a lot to improve performance without sacrificing image quality. But instead, we're abandoning those, which, by the way, these technologies are like part of Vulkan, part of DirectX 12. We're abandoning those and just going with DLSS. It annoys the hell out of me. But anyway. Sorry, I had another cough there. But yeah, it's just... if I only had a few $1 billion to just buy one of these companies. Actually, multiple billions. But yeah, I mean, it's just... There's some really, really neat stuff out there. And Reflex 2, I think no one should end up using. DLSS 4, I think, is being abused so that they can inflate the numbers. So definitely the RTX 50 series, wait for independent reviews. I cannot stress that enough. I cannot stress that enough. Fortunately, I have seen many people pointing out that same thing. that DLSS 4 on its own may be responsible for a significant amount, if not the complete amount, of that doubling performance. So, yeah, it's... As I recall, the 5090 and 5080 are releasing the end of the month, so we'll be seeing reviews around then. No idea when we'll be seeing the RX 9000 series stuff, although I did see something today even that potentially AMD's already shipping out review samples of that, so don't know what we'll see about that. Oh, that does remind me of one thing I saw. Apparently AMD was saying that the claims of performance rumors, they would all be false because they hadn't finished the drivers yet. So any numbers that were being seen were not with finished drivers, so the performance could still improve from that, assuming that the numbers were accurate for incorrect drivers, old drivers. So yeah, anyway. That has been more than enough of my blathering, so yeah, see you next time.